Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dharma. It is once again a pleasure for me to be back at the Subang Jaya Buddhist Association. The topic of today's sharing is Gradual Training, Gradual Practice, and Gradual Progress. This is actually based on a sutra, Majjhima Nikaya 107, where the Buddha was giving advice to a young monk by the name of Ganaka Moggallāna. Now, as we are aware, one of Buddha's chief disciples is Moggallāna. So this Ganaka Moggallāna is not the same Moggallāna. This is a young monk with the same name, Ganaka Moggallāna. So today's sharing, basically, we're going to take a look at how the Buddha advised that the Dharma is to be studied, understood, and practiced in a progressive manner. And it is only through this progressive manner can we begin to realize the fruits of our practice. And today's sharing, I'm going to connect this specifically with the Eightfold Way, or the Noble Eightfold Path, which is really a progressive methodology that ultimately leads to the awakening and freedom from all suffering. So I'm going to show how this specific teaching of the Buddha is actually very directly connected with the Eightfold Way. And we're going to also take a look at the comprehensive advice that the Buddha gave to Ganaka Moggallāna, the young monk, how to accomplish this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, as found in Majjhima Nikaya 107. And today I'm going to add in a very special component towards the end. I'm going to add in, I have spent about more than 3 decades traveling around the world teaching professionals how to be better at what they're doing. And one of the important things that I have used is basically from the research from the field of neuroscience and psychology to help people how to improve the way they think and how to improve the way they do things or the way they work. So I'm going to share with you today some of these important things that I have used during my professional career. And this is really the psychology of achievement, where we're going to take a look at motivational science, how we can use a scientific way to motivate ourselves. So I'm going to share that towards the later part of today's sharing. To begin, we go back to the very beginning, what the Buddha really taught. And when the Buddha first became awakened, he gave the first sermon. And in his first sermon, the very first thing he taught the 5 ascetics basically is the middle way. So when he spoke of the middle way, he was saying that there are 2 extremities to be avoided. The first extremity is indulgence in sensual pleasures. Well, he should know that very well because he was a prince. And during his princely life, he had experienced all kinds of sensual pleasures. In fact, it was mentioned in one of the sutras that he had 3 palaces. One for the winter months, one for the summer months, and one for the rainy seasons. And in these 3 palaces, there were only young people. And in fact, it was also mentioned there were no male servants. All his servants were beautiful young women. So he basically indulged in a lot of sensual pleasures during his time as a prince. So he should realize, he should know, speaking from experience, what indulgence in sensual pleasure is really all about. And then he also mentioned there is the other extremity to be avoided, because after he left the princely life and became a renunciate, one of the things he started practicing was asceticism. So he warned his ascetic friends that the other extreme to be avoided is self-tormenting and self-mortification, basically the practice of asceticism. Now, these 2 are very interesting extremes because in the first extreme, it is really indulgence in sensual pleasure that happens when we become aroused and get excited when we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch something that is exciting, that is motivating us to want to have more of it. So that actually leads us to indulge in it if we are not careful with our state of mind. So that is the one extreme. The other extreme, people try to prevent themselves indulging in sensual pleasures. What do? So they practice the other extreme, that is asceticism. And basically, asceticism means the suppression of emotional urges. When we get excited and aroused emotionally and things makes us feel pleasurable or painful, then we suppress our reaction. We hold back and suppressing it, and that is also to be avoided. Both extremes will bring tremendous amount of suffering into our lives. So we have to be careful about not indulging in either of these two extremes. And basically the Buddha taught that there is a middle way. And what is the middle way? Well, simply put, and I'm using the summary taught to me by my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, the middle way is basically conscious relaxation, introspective attention, and mental equilibrium. So what is conscious relaxation? Well, all these three can be practiced both in daily life, every moment of our life, as well as being able to practice this during our meditation practice. So conscious relaxation simply means that when we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch anything that excites us, that arouses our emotions, either making us lustful for something pleasurable or angry and hateful for something unpleasant, we should just learn to relax instead of either reacting to it, indulging in it, or holding back and suppressing it. We just relax. So the next time we come across something that excites us, just relax. Right? Learn to relax. And one of the easy way to relax is to take a deep breath. So that's conscious relaxation. Consciously relaxing before reacting, before thinking about what you want to do next. And this will help you practice the Buddha's teaching in a simple, practical way. And then we begin to bring our attention inwards to see what is happening to us. Why are we aroused by this sensation? Why are we angry? Or why are we feeling greedy or lustful towards it? So this is introspective attention, bringing our attention inwards. Introspective attention comes from, this word introspective comes from two words. Intro, which means bringing it inwards, internally, bringing it inwards. Spection comes from the word inspection. So examine yourself internally. What's going on? Don't get distracted or disturbed by what's going on outside. Look at your mind, look at your body, what's happening to your mind and your body. So that is introspective attention. And the third thing, when you are able to do that, you will find yourself experiencing a state of calm and peace that now you're able to respond in a wiser way, a more intelligent way. And this is really a kind of mental equilibrium, a kind of peace of mind that you can experience. So this is a practical, day-to-day, moment-to-moment practice of conscious relaxation, introspective attention, and mental equilibrium. But from the practice of meditation, it's exactly the same thing. What is the first thing you do when you want to meditate? You sit down, put your back straight, and if you're on the floor, then cross your leg. Otherwise, you can sit on the chair, or you could be walking. And you begin to relax. That's the first thing you have to do. And one of the tools for relaxation is to observe your breath. Observe the breathing process that's going on. Observing it helps you relax. And then you bring your attention inwards. And that's what you do in meditation. In meditation, you don't pay attention what's going on outside. You don't care what people are saying or what the sound is going on or what is happening out there. You just focus your attention inwards. So that's introspective attention. And when you're able to do that, your mind will be stilled. And when your mind stills, it will experience a state of mental equilibrium called samadhi. And of course, samadhi is commonly translated as concentration, but actually the more precise word, the more precise translation of the meaning of samadhi is mental equilibrium. Or some people would say mental stillness or stillness of the mind. Or in fact, Venerable Agachita has taught here a few times in the Satipatthana workshop as well as the Vipassana Samatha workshop, where he pointed out that samadhi is really composure and focus, and he calls it compo-focus. So that is really samadhi, mental equilibrium. Well, my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, uses mental equilibrium. Not concentration, because the meaning of concentration is when you concentrate, it's an effort. That concentration actually makes you exert effort, and that exertion of effort would spoil the stillness and peace of your mind. So that is really what conscious relaxation, introspective attention, and mental equilibrium means, both in day-to-day, moment-to-moment, daily life, or in your meditation practice. And this can be found in the teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path or the Sublime Eightfold Way. So that is really what it is. Now, what is this Sublime Eightfold Way or the Noble Eightfold Path? Very quickly, I'll just summarize here. So today I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just looking at the stages. There are 8 aspects of it. Right? The first 2 basically is talking about the mental cultivation. You cultivate your mind by first gaining right view. And right view can come through the study of Dharma. Right view can come from fruitful discussion with your Kalyana Mitras, your fellow Dharma farers. And in that discussion, you begin to learn what is the good teachings of the Buddha. And you can study the sutra, attend sutra study workshop, and so on. So you gain right view. That means you now have a good understanding of what the Buddha taught. What is the good thing to do? What are wholesome things to do? And what are things to be avoided? And having learned that, that is just knowledge. But knowledge is not enough. You need to be inspired. And not only inspired, you need to be aspired. Aspiration. Aspiration is more than inspiration. Inspiration is seeing somebody do something and then you want to follow what that person does. And that is what we do when we see what the Buddha has accomplished. But aspiration comes from within. We then realize there's something we must do. And this something we must do, this realization is really this right intention or harmonious orientation. We begin to reorientate our life towards this wholesome behavior and these wholesome virtues that we have learned from the Dharma. So now we have the intention. So all this relates to the mind, and this helps us gain some level of wisdom, panya. This is the initial level of wisdom, understanding basically what are wise things to do, what are unwise things to avoid. And having learned that, having understood that, now we begin to practice it in real life. How do we practice it? We practice it by right speech. Watch what we say. And we practice it by right action. Watch what we do. And we also practice by the way we live our life, harmonious lifestyle, or another translation is right livelihood. To choose professions that refrain from harming other people, harming ourselves. So this is really the practice of morality, sila. So that is the second portion of the Eightfold Path. Then comes the next thing. Finally, you begin to cultivate your mind at a deeper level. And how do you cultivate your mind at a deeper level? You learn and practice meditation. So you begin with this right effort. This right effort relates to the practice of meditation, how the use of techniques taught by the Buddha can help us cultivate our mind, bring our mind to a level of peace and calm and mental equilibrium, and purify our mind. So the whole purpose of meditation really is to purify our mind. Right? So beginning with this right effort, you will begin to realize the fruits of your practice. And the next step, when you begin to realize the fruits of your practice of meditation, then you go deeper into a deeper level of meditation. And this next form of meditation is really satipatthana, or commonly translated as mindfulness. But the more precise word is really introspective attention. Introspective attention, harmonious introspective attention. That is really the practice of satipatthana. So this is samasati. And when you begin to practice that, you begin to deepen your practice, and it will then reach the level where you're beginning to realize the fruits of your practice. You will begin to experience a state of samadhi, stillness of mind, mental equilibrium, mental composure and focus of the mind. And this will then lead you to samadhi. Samadhi is really a level of tranquility of mind, or a level of mental equilibrium where your mind is perfectly still, your mind is at peace, and you are benefiting from that. And it is in this stillness of mind that you really begin to see the true realities of life. And when you're able to see and understand the true realities of life, you're gaining what is called vipassana. Pasana is seeing. V means distinct. So vipassana means distinct seeing. So you begin to see clearly the realities of life. So this is what the Eightfold Path is really all about. Now let's take a look at how the Buddha explained this in a different way to Ganaka Moggallāna. In Majjhima Nikaya 107, I have summarized here, where the Buddha talked about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It all began when Ganaka Moggallāna asked the Buddha, because the Ganaka Moggallāna noticed that people in the vihara, people in the monastery, when they are learning how to do something, they learn it in gradual steps, a little step at a time, small things. The person who has to clean the building, he does a little things, he learns how to clean it step by step. And then he also asked about the Dharma, learning the Dharma, how people learn the Dharma in step by step, one sutra at a time. So he asked the Buddha, then how is it that we can then gain this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress? And Buddha then spelled out there are 8 stages to this gradual progress. The first is to cultivate our mind, to be able to conduct ourselves in a virtuous way. So he calls it virtuous conduct. And this is through the practice of restraining ourselves by allowing the 8 precepts, or rather the 5 precepts, to guide us for normal lay people. And of course, for the monks, they have a whole lot more precepts to follow. So this is virtuous conduct, followed by guarding our senses, and then followed by being moderate with eating. Now, I'm going to go through in a summary way first and come back to each one in detail. So why did Buddha spend so much time talking about eating? Now, the Buddha was very wise. He knew that for monks, they can renounce from every other pleasure in the world. They can renounce from wearing luxurious clothing, sleeping on luxurious beds, renounce on being pampered or served, and whatever. But the one thing they cannot renounce from is eating. Everybody needs to eat. So that's why being moderate at eating was a very important part of the Buddha's advice to all the monks. And then the Buddha went on to say to be devoted to wakefulness. Wakefulness means you're able to bring your attention inwards and be aware, be awake to what's going on inside you, your body and your mind. So that is wakefulness. It is wakefulness that will lead you to insight. And then with this introspective attention, you bring your attention inwards. With this introspective attention, you begin to cultivate. And that is bhavana. Bhavana actually, it was translated by Westerners as the word meditation. But we know the word meditation can also mean a whole lot of other practices related to other forms of meditation. But what the Buddha really meant with bhavana is to cultivate your mind and to tame your behavior. Right? So it's both the behavior of the body and the stillness of the mind, the purity of the mind. And then, in order to maintain it, in order not to allow it to be spoiled, and in order to continue to gain progress in our practice, we need to maintain it. And this is resorting to seclusion. That means monks no longer engage in what is called gregariousness. Gregariousness means mixing with small people, doing all kinds of small things, chit-chatting and all that. Actually, there's a Chinese word for that. It's called gepoji. So basically, monks should refrain from getting involved with small things where people talk all kinds of things and all that. So that is resort to seclusion, to maintain the benefits that is gained. And then finally, you can strengthen that. And the Buddha pointed out, to strengthen it, you then begin to abandon the 5 hindrances or eliminate the 5 hindrances. And when you're able to eliminate the 5 hindrances, you are then able to experience the 4 jhanas. And that is really gradual reduction of this affective process, where we go through the stage of experiencing the 4 jhanas. I will explain all this in a bit more detail. But in a nutshell, what the Buddha was really advising Ganaka Moggallāna was sila, samadhi, and panya. It is through the stillness of the mind that we are able to see realities. We're able to gain insight into the true realities of life. So let's take a look at the first one, which is virtuous conduct. Virtuous conduct comes from two key words: virtues and conduct. So what are virtues and what are conduct? And we have taken a quick look at the eightfold path earlier on. So the first two, where we gain initial level of wisdom, what is wise, what is wholesome, what is to be practiced and what is to be avoided. That initial level of wisdom, understanding what is good for us, what is good for others, and what we should avoid, what can harm or hurt us and others, that is virtues. Virtues is knowing and understanding what is right from wrong, what is good and what is to be avoided, and so on. And knowing is not enough. We must be able to practice it, and that's where the practice comes in. The practice of morality, sila. And this practice is really our conduct, the practice of the body. So virtuous conduct deals with these first 5 stages of the Eightfold Path, or the Sublime Eightfold Way. And now let's take a look at then what comes next. And what comes next is the cultivation of the mind, purification of the mind. And purification of the mind begins with this guarding of the senses. Guarding of the senses is actually withdrawing our attention when we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch something exciting. Right? So in other words, something that arouses our emotion, we realize that it is arousing our emotion. If we continue to see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it, it will actually even arouse our emotions more. What should we do? We should withdraw our attention from it. Right? That means these are external things influencing, disturbing our mind, polluting our mind. So we should withdraw our attention from it. By withdrawing our attention from it, we are not allowing any new contaminations entering the mind. So this process is called samvara. And then the next thing we should do is then to be moderate with our eating. And because eating is something that we have to do as part of survival, of staying alive. So the Buddha has always taught that eating is really a way to sustain the body so that the body can support our practice of the holy life. And then we should then be careful the way we think. And this taking care of what we think is devoting to wakefulness. And this devotion to wakefulness is commonly called bhana. Bhana is really the abandonment of our memory, imagination, and expectations. You see, we can withdraw our attention from external influences. We can withdraw our attention from sensory inputs coming from outside. But what happens when we bring our attention inwards and then the mind begins to carry memories of the past, imagination of a fearful future that hasn't happened yet, and expectation that is making us feel very dissatisfied? Because when we think of the past, we have regrets. When we think of the future, we are fearful. And when we think of the present, we have expectations. And expectations can lead to all kinds of suffering. So we must learn how to abandon the arising of memory, imagination, expectation. And that process is called bhana. Abandonment simply means that we are not allowing our past contaminants. You see, over the course of our life and previous lives, the mind has accumulated a lot of asavas, taints, right, defilements. And they will disturb the mind. They will arise in the form of memory, imagination, expectations. So we must learn how to let go. When these memory, imagination, expectation arise, we got to learn to let go. Don't indulge in it. Don't get disturbed by it, and don't get distracted by it. So that process is bhana, abandonment. And then we need to bring our attention inwards and focus on what's going on in the mind and in the body. And this is cultivation for the purpose of purifying the mind, purification of the mind. And this is bhavana, right? Commonly translated as meditation. But actually this is purification of mind, cultivation of the mind. Helping us to cultivate good thoughts, virtues, knowing what is good for us, and focusing our mind on things that are wholesome and good for us. So that is cultivation. And all this will mean nothing if we are not able to maintain it. So finally, maintenance. And maintenance is really resorting to seclusion. Not allowing the mind to be contaminated any further. Not allowing memories from past to continue to disturb us any further. So we need to seclude ourselves from all these disturbances. So all these stages of progress basically is harmonious exercise, or what is called right effort, sama vayama. And when we speak of sama vayama in the sutras, it is mentioned very clearly that the practice of sama vayama, or right effort, or my teacher calls them harmonious exercise, are made of 4 kinds of exercises. And these are the 4 kinds of exercises mentioned there: samvara, bahana, bhavana, and anurakana. So these are the 4 kinds of harmonious exercises that make up sama vayama. And these 4 exercises are called Chattari Sama Padana, which is commonly called 4 great strivings. So if you want more information on that, you can actually Google 4 great strivings or 4 great efforts, right? And then you will be able to find more on that. So basically these are sama vayama. So let's take a look at this sama vayama, or commonly called right effort. And this is really the beginning of your practice of meditation. That you must first bring your attention inwards, withdrawing your attention from anything that is disturbing your mind. This withdrawal of attention from external factors that are disturbing your mind is helping you to prevent the mind from further being polluted by any new contaminations. That means you will not gain any new contamination of the mind if you learn to withdraw your attention. Now this word samvara is sometimes taught as, stop your senses when you see, hear, smell, taste, or touch something. It's actually not stopping the senses. It is all about attention. Withdraw your attention, and then you can prevent the mind from being polluted by any new pollutants. Now, why is it not stopping your senses? You see, stopping your senses is when you see something unwholesome, you shut your eyes. When you hear something unwholesome, you close your ears. Now, can you do that all the time? For a person driving along the road, right? And you could be stopped at the red light. And then you see something terrible happening right in front of you. One person may be murdering somebody else, right? And all this is making you very excited. Or it could be something simple that 2 people are fighting. Now, if you begin to continue your attention watching people fighting, you're getting more and more aroused. How can you prevent yourself from being aroused? Take your attention away from it. Now, that when you're driving, you can't close your eyes. How can you continue to drive with your eyes closed? You can't do that. So take your attention away from it. Don't indulge in it. But one of the most common things I personally see that's going on is people go to Facebook, people go to YouTube, and then they see all kinds of unwholesome videos going on, showing very unwholesome activities. Now, these unwholesome things are new pollutants to your mind. When you observe them, these unwholesome things that are going on, people getting killed, right? The ISIS slashing people's throat, right? And all these very unwholesome things are just arousing your emotion. The more you look at it, the more your emotion gets aroused. And the more you look at it, more and more contaminants are entering your mind. So learn to withdraw the attention. So therefore, you learn how to avoid, right? Prevent new contaminants entering your mind. That is samvara. Preventing new contaminants entering your mind. And then the next practice is bahana. Bahana simply means abandonment or giving up, letting go. That means when your memory, imagination arises, what is arising? What is arising are things that have been contaminated in the past. Previous things that have already arisen in you. Now they arise in the form of memory, imagination, expectation. So learn to let it go. Don't allow it to disturb your mind. Don't allow it to disturb your peace of mind. So this is bahana, withdrawing or abandoning any memory, imagination, expectation that arises. Because these are unwholesome images that appear in your mind, and unwholesome images just continue to disturb your mind. And therefore, you learn how to cultivate peace of mind. So with these 2 practices, you can actually gain peace of mind. It's not about shutting your senses. It's not about closing your eyes. It's about withdrawing your attention. Right? And it's not about forgetting. You can't easily forget. But what you can do when these memory arise, just let it go. Don't think about it. Don't dwell on it. So that is bhana. And then in order to maintain it, you need to cultivate to maintain. And that cultivation to maintain all this is bhavana, the cultivation of wholesome thoughts. That means now you begin to infuse your mind with good thoughts. And that's where you study the Dharma, you understand the good teachings of the Buddha, and then your mind will begin more and more filled with good thoughts. And that is cultivating wholesome states that have not yet arisen in you. And that is the practice of bhavana. Purification of mind comes also from infusing your mind with good thoughts and wholesome thoughts. So that is bhavana, commonly translated as meditation, but actually it means cultivation of the mind, purification of the mind. Now, in order to maintain all that, then you need to maintain all the progress that you have gained. And maintenance is anurakkhana. So that means you bring this teaching to your daily practice. When you're driving on the road and you see something unwholesome going on, withdraw your attention from it. Of course, if somebody needs help, you can help that person. But if it is just something that is disturbing you and it's not requiring you to help someone, then take your attention away from it. So maintaining and perfecting all the good thoughts that are in your mind. Right? So that is really anurakkhana. And that is part of these 4 great strivings. Now, I'm just showing that image here, not because that's what you should do out on the streets. You don't sit on the floor in the middle of the street and meditate. But basically, it is like carrying what you have benefited from your meditation into your daily life. Right? So by learning how to purify your mind, even as you walk, as you stand, as you sit. And all these are advice given by the Buddha to Ganaka Moggallānas. So those 4 great strivings or 4 harmonious exercises are samvara, bhana, bhavana, and anurakkhana. Then the Buddha went on to explain to Ganaka Moggallānas how do we guard our senses, because our 5 senses are constantly feeding into our mind all kinds of unwholesome thoughts and unwholesome things that haven't arisen in us yet. So these are the words of the Buddha in the sutra. He says, on seeing with the eye, do not grasp at its sight and features, since if you were to leave your mind, your eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief may invade you. Covetousness are things that make you lustful. Grief are things that make you angry or sad. Right? And then he says, practice the way of its restraint, restraining your attention, withdrawing your attention of the eye faculty and undertake restraint of the faculty. And then the Buddha went on to repeat this for all the other senses. The same when you are hearing, when you're smelling, when you're tasting, when you're touching. And finally, the 6th sense, the mind, when you're thinking, cognizing. So these are the words of the Buddha advising Ganaka Moggallāna how to guard our senses. Guarding the senses is not just shutting your eyes. It's really withdrawing the attention. It is about the mind, directing your mind away from unwholesome thoughts. And then the Buddha went on to advise Ganaka Moggallāna about being moderate at eating. He says that taking food, it is not for pleasure, intoxication, physical beauty, or attractiveness. Because taking food, that is really for endurance and sustenance of the body in order to help us end any discomfort from hunger or suffering of hunger, and then assisting and supporting the body in the holy life. So that is the whole purpose of eating. That eating is there to support the body so that sustain the body so that the body can support the practice. And then finally, the Buddha pointed out to then be devoted to wakefulness. And this is the practice of bhana, abandonment of our memory, imagination, expectation as they arise. And when the Buddha advised Ganaka Moggallāna, he wasn't just saying you do it during meditation. He says you do it throughout the day, 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And first, the Buddha said during the day, that means when we are progressing through our daily chores. While walking back and forth and sitting, purify the mind of obstructive states. That means obstructive states are memory, imagination, expectation arising that disturb the mind. Unwholesome thoughts that arise and disturb the mind, make us angry, make us fearful, make us sad, make us shameful, feeling guilty and all that. When all this arise, purify your mind by letting it go. And that is bhana. Let go these thoughts. And then the Buddha broke the night into 3 stages, because it's quite common in those days to break the night into 3 stages. The first stage is when people are preparing to go to bed and sleep. So he says, on the first watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, purify your mind of obstructive states. And then in the second stage, and this is the time when people actually sleep, but the Buddha actually never slept. He just laid down there and rested the body. So he was teaching his disciples that in the middle watch of the night, and that is when most people sleep, you should lie down on the right side. See, everywhere in the sutra where the Buddha taught the disciples to lie down, he always said, lie down on the right side. And then he calls this the lion's pose. Right? In the lion's pose, with one foot overlapping the other. And that is the picture you see there. And this is in fact the same pose that the Buddha adopted when he entered parinibbana, right? The lion's pose, where one foot was on top of the other and he was lying down on his right side, never on the left side. It's always on the right side. Now, nobody could explain exactly why, but in any case, he always pointed out it's the right side. And purify your mind. And mindful and fully aware what time you should wake up. So it's a good practice. Every night before you go to bed, before you actually sleep, give it a good thought that what time you want to wake up. And then you go to sleep. Right? So that is also what the Buddha advised to Ganaka Moggallāna. And finally he says on rising, the third watch of the night is the time when you begin to rise up from the bed. After rising, in the third watch of the night, while walking back and forth and sitting, purify your mind of obstructive states. You see, the Buddha's advice here is very clear. Throughout the day, every moment of our life, we must learn to purify our mind, because these obstructive states will keep arising. Our defilements, our taints, the asavas, they will keep arising in our memory, imagination, expectation, disturbing the mind and causing us to do things that may be unwholesome. So learn to purify the mind every moment of the day. That was what the Buddha actually taught. So throughout the day, when we feel ourselves being excited, when we feel our emotions being aroused, what should we do? We should learn to relax. And this is conscious relaxation. Relax the body, because when we get excited, the body is filled with biochemical activities going on. By relaxing, it allows the biochemical activities to subside. And then at the same time, it relaxes the body, so there's no more tension in the body. The body eases. And then when the body eases, the mind is no longer disturbed by an agitated body or tensions in the body. Because a relaxed body is an absolute necessary condition to help us calm our mind. If your body is not relaxed, if the body is still agitated, excited, it's very hard to calm your mind. Almost impossible. And then you begin to calm your mind after you have relaxed. And calming the mind is to bring the attention inwards. Introspective attention. Intro, inwards. Spective, inspective, inspection. Bring your mind inwards. And then conscious focus attention inwards, examining the body and the mind, withdrawn from our sensory perceptions and arousals, abandoning memory, imagination, expectations, and then stilling our emotional arousal, allowing the emotions to still, the chitta. The chitta is the emotional mind. So this is really introspective attention. The first part, relaxing the body, will break biochemical reactions in the body, because once your body is excited with all kinds of hormones going on, you're now stopping new hormones being released. You can't stop the old one. You can't get rid of the old one right away, but you can allow it to subside. It's like switching off a fan. The fan doesn't stop right away. When you switch off a fan, it takes a bit of time before it spins down. The same way, your body gets excited with hormones, it takes a little bit of time before it subsides. So that is the first part with conscious relaxation. And then the second part with introspective attention, you first withdraw your mind from external influences. Right? You don't get distracted by what you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And then you also abandon any internal influences, your memory, imagination, expectation. So this is the practice of samvara and pahana. So far, looking at the advice given by the Buddha to Ganaka Moggallāna, we have now covered the first 4. And then the Buddha went on to explain about cultivation, bhavana, and also maintenance, anurakana. And these are very important aspects because it's only through bhavana and anurakana can we truly realize the fruits of our practice. So this bhavana and anurakana is dealing with the eightfold way in the meditation part. We have covered right effort. Now we look at right mindfulness. And then we will go on to look at the samadhi later on. So bhavana, cultivation of mind. So the Buddha's advice to Ganaka Moggallāna was that to bring your attention inwards. Act in full awareness. And that means you're fully aware of what goes on in the body and the mind. When going forward and returning, that means be mindful, be aware of what's happening in your body as your body moves. When looking ahead or looking away. So be aware of what you're seeing. And when flexing and extending your limbs. That means when you're doing something, whatever you're doing, be mindful of your own actions. And when wearing your robes or carrying your outer robe or your bowl, that means any object that we're handling, just be aware, be mindful of all that. And when eating, when drinking, when consuming food and drinks. And in fact, also when we do our personal things in the toilet. So when defecating and urinating, even be mindful as you're doing your routine in the toilet. And then when walking, standing, sitting, right, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. Every activity of the body, we have to focus our mind and pay attention. And that is really the basis of mindfulness. To be aware of everything that we're doing. And that is the right way to cultivate our mind, to purify our mind. And finally, to learn how to break away from all the gregariousness that's going on. Right? Don't get involved with all the kepochi matters that's going on around us. Right? Resort to seclusion, anurakana, maintenance. And that is in the case during those days. In those days we don't have retreats. We don't have retreats in resorts like Chinsui Temple and all this. So basically the Buddha's advice to the monks is then to go to the forest, right? Or to the root of a tree, or to a mountain, or to a ravine, and all these places where they can be secluded from all the activities, the hustle bustle of everybody else around them. And then sit and also when returning from the alms round, so the Buddha's advice is to sit down, cross your legs, and keep your back straight, and that is a very important thing. And then establish mindfulness before you. And that's really Buddha's advice on how we can maintain our practice. Whenever we can, just practice our meditation. Seclude ourselves from all this hustle bustle of city life. Right? Resort to seclusion. So basically, we have now covered 6 of these 8 stages of progress. And then the last 2 will help us reap the benefits of our practice. So number 7 is really being able to abandon or eliminate the 5 hindrances. And that is one of the most wonderful benefits we can ever gain from our meditation practice. Eliminating the 5 hindrances. And then finally gaining the experience of jhana. And it's only in the experience of jhana can we then begin to see the true realities of life. We can gain true insight into the true realities of life. Vipassana. So you can't actually have panya without jhana. And you can't have jhana without panya. So this is really what the Buddha was advising Ganaka Moggallāna. So let's take a look at the 5 hindrances then. Abandoning the 5 hindrances. Now I'm using the translations by my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, where he pointed out these 5 hindrances. The first 2 are very straightforward, right? first one is referring to our lust for sensual desires, something that makes us excited, that makes us feeling pleasurable. We want more of it. That is the first thing we got to learn to abandon. And then the second is things that anger us, that make us angry or hateful. These are things that are unpleasant, displeasures or pain. So we should also learn to abandon that. That means don't react. When something makes you upset, don't react right away. This is the important thing about abandoning or eliminating the 5 hindrances. Now comes the next one, very interesting. Tina Mida. Tina Mida is commonly translated as sloth and torpor. Now the word sloth gives a meaning of laziness. The word torpor gives a meaning of weakness. But it's not really laziness that the Buddha was talking about. Because here the Buddha is talking about his noble disciples who have now benefited from 6 of the 8 stages already. These are not lazy people. So the Buddha wasn't really talking about laziness for people to be able to abandon the 5 hindrances. The Buddha was talking about lethargy and drowsiness. Lethargy simply means we basically are getting a little bit weaker and weaker in our practice. So we must be aware that we are not weakening in our practice. Drowsiness is that this weakening of our effort leads to a stage where we become very drowsy and where we're losing our attention. So this is Tina Mida really. Not talking about people who are lazy, but really talking about people whose effort are not strong enough, and because of that, they begin to get a little bit sleepy in their practices, or they begin to lose interest. Right? This is really a state where you're not motivated to work harder. And then comes the other extreme, that at the same time you could be excited and agitated because you have certain expectations that are not fulfilled during your meditation. So you become anxious, right? Anxious is anxious towards the future. Worry is worrying about the past. So these are really uducha kukucha, right? Unfortunately, the word uducha kukucha was sometimes translated as something to do with feeling guilty and all that, but it's actually not. Right? Remorse. One of the words that was translated is remorse. It's not really remorse. It is an agitation of the mind making you feel restless. So it's a kind of restlessness, anxiety and worry. And when you have all these 4 happening, it leads your mind into a disturbed state. A state where the mind is not peaceful, where you're experiencing cognitive dissonance. And that is vicikiccha. Now vicikiccha is often translated as doubt. Now, this is again not doubt, because these are noble disciples of the Buddha. They no longer doubt the words of the Buddha. So this is not talking about doubting the Dharma. This is actually, there is a perfect psychological term to explain vicikiccha, and that is cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? Our mind is made of 2 parts, really 2 activities going on. The emotional mind and the thinking mind, right? The intellect and the emotion. They are pulling in opposite direction. So what do I mean by that? Intellect is you know what is good for you. You know what is the right thing to do. Emotion is you feel like doing something else. And that is what is happening to us. We know we should practice the 5 precepts every moment of our life. At the same time, there are moments where we feel like engaging in some pleasures or doing things that are not consistent with the 5 precepts. So this feel like is the emotion. The knowing is the thinking, and they are pulling in opposite direction, and they are causing disturbance in the mind. And that disturbance causes you to doubt whether you are able to gain benefit from your practice. That is vicikiccha. So basically the way to overcome that is harmonious equilibrium, to bring the mind to a level of peace and stillness. When you're able to abandon and eliminate the 5 hindrances, you will then be able to experience samadhi. You're able to practice this. So now looking at this eightfold path, we have covered 7, and then finally the last one, which leads us to samadhi. Right? Now, I still have time, so I'm going to spend the next few minutes showing you from the field of motivational science. Now we're talking about more mundane things. What happens in real life to people when they put in an effort to do things. This is not necessarily about meditation, but the lesson from here is related to meditation. How people can become successful with what they do. The spirit to succeed. The heart of a champion. So when we meditate, we should also have this spirit to want to succeed in our meditation practice. So I'm going to show you this video. Take a look at what goes on. This is about a race, that a young girl participating in a race and what happens to her.
March 2nd, 2008 at the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. It's the last day of the tightly contested Big Ten Championship of women's indoor track.
Unless you win the national title, nobody really cares if you're 10th or 12th or whatever. But if you win a Big Ten title, that's a big deal.
Senior Heather Dorniden-Camp is in lane 4 of the second heat for the 600-meter finals.
I think my coaches were kind of expecting me to really put it forward and try and win that race, and I'm sure my parents thought the same thing.
Throughout her college career, Heather set several school records for the track team. A win here will help propel Minnesota to the top of the Big Ten standings. The home crowd can barely contain its enthusiasm as the gun sounds for this 3-lap race. 1 lap down, and all is going well for the 9-time All-American.
My plan for the race was to just hang out behind whoever was leading it and then take it at the end.
But as the pack finishes lap number 2, something happens.
I was cutting in to try and get to the inside lane before the first curve. I was kind of running and then felt something on my right foot, and then when I tried to correct that, somebody must have stepped on my left foot, and so I kind of felt like I was hogtied and just went down.
Heather does a face plant in the middle of the track.
It was like the wind got taken out of the whole crowd. It was just like,
I didn't really know what happened for the first step, and then the second step was when I really just went down. And I think I actually got the words, "Oh no," out as I was falling.
Friend and former teammate Elizabeth Yetzer can barely watch.
The whole stadium's just like, oh my gosh, you know, and of course you're thinking she's done.
The rest of the pack bolts past Heather, leaving her several yards behind, entering the final lap.
So you see, that is really what happened when that person tripped over. Usually in a race like that, that's the end of story. But in her case, she had the perseverance. And what is the perseverance? The will to win, the will to continue and never give up. So the practice is never give up.
The rest of the pack bolts past Heather, leaving her several yards behind, entering the final lap. But with the heart of a champion, Heather gets up.
it took a while for everybody to catch their breath and then go, oh my Lord, something very, very special is happening here.
I knew that I needed to continue to run and just earn some points for the team.
She starts to make her move.
To me, they're all bodies and they're targets out there. I had my first target in sights and I started catching her, and after I had passed my first person, then I saw that the other two weren't that far away. And then as I was coming around the final curve of the race, I heard the announcer say, "And watch out for Heather Dorniden."
The crowd can't believe what it's witnessing.
Oh my word, she's gonna do this, she can do this. People were just jumping up and down and going crazy and just in awe.
Heather runs her heart out, catching her competitors one at a time. She inches her way to the lead runner. The race is neck and neck, and in the very last moment, she completes her unbelievable finish, edging out teammate Jamie Dittmar by 4/100ths of a second.
People were going crazy. I mean, nobody could believe it. I mean, officials were coming over, but everybody just was so energized after that that there was no way we were going to lose that meet.
Heather herself can't believe how she did it.
I don't know really where it came from. It's funny because everyone says how gutsy I was and how hard it must have been to finish that race like that. But honestly, I think it's the most effortless I've ever felt in a race. It was truly like I was lifted up on angels' wings.
Well, there are two very important lessons from what you have just seen. In fact, this is the first time in a major race that somebody did that. Fall down and end up coming from behind and winning the race. It's the first time that ever happened, and nobody was able to repeat this kind of thing. Usually when they fall down, even if they continue to run, they're not going to win the race. And she did. Two important lessons. The first one step at a time. She wasn't thinking of winning. She was focused on catching up to the person in front of her, one step at a time. So basically, this is really what happened here, one step at a time.
She starts to make her move.
To me, they're all bodies and they're targets out there. I had my first target in sights and I started catching her, and after I had passed my first person, then I saw that the other two weren't that far away.
Heather runs her heart out, catching her competitors one at a time. She inches her way to the lead runner. The race is neck and neck, and in the very last moment, she completes her unbelievable finish, edging out teammate Jamie Dittmar by 4/100ths of a second.
So it's important translating that into your meditation practice. It is very important that when you meditate, don't think about the end goal. Don't think about gaining nibbana. Focus your mind on the meditation. One moment at a time, not even one day at a time, one moment at a time, as you sit there, meditate. And one of the common things that goes wrong with our meditation practice, this is what happens. People say, okay, I'm going to meditate for 1 hour. So he sits down. 5 minutes later, the mind starts to think, 5 minutes, that's a very long time, very slow. Maybe I hope the time will go faster. People like that. The mind is very, very anxious, All this is disturbing your meditation. Focus on one moment at a time. That's really what it is. Because understanding the purpose of meditation, the purpose of meditation is really cultivation, and that is purification of the mind. So you are there to cultivate and purify the mind. Don't worry about whether the 5 minutes is too slow or you're going to make the 1 hour and this time I'm going to break record. I have done 1 hour last time. I'm going to do 1 hour 15 minutes and so on. Don't think about it like that. Focus on one step at a time. Be diligent with your practice. Work on it. Work on your practice to refine your practice, and focus on one step at a time. Focus on one moment at a time. And most importantly, perseverance. Never give up. Because a successful journey is made of taking one successful step at a time. That's really what it is. And that is the same thing you should apply in your meditation practice. The second lesson is this thing called in the zone. Let's see what happened there about in the zone.
Heather herself can't believe how she did it.
I don't know really where it came from. It's funny because everyone says how gutsy I was and how hard it must have been to finish that race like that. But honestly, I think it's the most effortless I've ever felt in a race. It was truly like I was lifted up on angels' wings.
There were two things she said. She was really in the zone. In the zone means you're deep into your actual effort, and you are really experiencing the fruits of your effort. And this is what she said. She said, it was the most effortless I have ever felt at any race. Amazing. She came from behind and won the race, and yet she said it was effortless. Why? Because she was in the zone. She was very focused on one moment at a time. And then she went on to say, it was like I was lifted up on angels' wings. So focusing on one moment at a time is very helpful. And the first thing you should focus on is conscious relaxation. Relax the body, calm the mind, and then you can meditate successfully. And that will help you persevere. Perseverance. Now, in the teaching of the Buddhas, there's a very important lesson about perseverance. It is really the mental toughness to progress, to succeed. And it is made of 5 components. First is saddha, which is confidence and aspiration, commonly translated as faith. But saddha is really not faith. It is confidence and aspiration rooted in a foundation of understanding the Dharma. And then having the energy to be motivated, virya, to be motivated and having the energy and the willpower to really do it, put in the effort. And then you begin to bring your attention inwards and focus on what is going on in your mind and your body. That is introspective attention, sati. And then number 4, it can lead you to samadhi, mental equilibrium. And finally, you will gain wisdom, insight into the realities. These are called the 5 spiritual faculties, indriya. So these are the 5 spiritual faculties that can help you succeed in your practice of the Dharma. Now, from motivational science, I'm going to show you one more important thing, and that is what is really going on when we begin to learn and practice something. Before we learn meditation, before we even start the first effort in meditation, we had no idea what to do, how to do. So we didn't know and we were not good. So that is what we call unconscious incompetence. Now, unconscious means you're not aware. You're not conscious about it. You don't realize what it is. You don't know what it is. You don't have the knowledge yet. Incompetence means you don't have the skill yet. You have not yet gained the skill. So in other words, at the beginning of our practice, when we're new to the Dharma, when we're new to meditation, we really don't know what to do or how to do. So this is not aware of what we need to do, what skills we need to develop. So we begin to listen to Dharma talks, we begin to listen to teachers, we begin to follow monks who are teaching retreats. So there are a few retreats coming up with SJBA, so it'll be good to go there. And so we begin to learn something. And beginning to learn something leads us to the next level called conscious incompetence. That means the unconscious becomes conscious. You are now aware of what needs to be done. But you're not yet skillful yet. You're not yet able to do it yet. You haven't mastered the skill yet. So you're still so-called incompetent there. The word incompetence doesn't mean you're stupid. It simply means you have not mastered the skill yet. So from unconscious incompetence, you now become conscious competence. Now you begin to practice diligently. You put in your effort and you begin to realize the fruits of your effort. You begin to benefit from it. You begin to be able to master the skill. And that takes you to the next level. Conscious competence. Now you are fully aware of what needs to be done, how to do it, and you are actually very skillful at it. So now you are very capable at it. So you are now at the level of conscious competence. And finally, because you are so skillful at it, you're able to internalize everything. That means it now becomes second nature to you. You're able to just sit down and go deep into your practice right away without having to struggle through the initial stages of lethargy and anxiety and so on. So this is really, you don't even have to try very hard because you're now very, very skillful at it. That is unconscious competence. The word unconscious doesn't mean you don't know. The word unconscious means you have internalized it and it arises automatically. The good skills, the wholesome knowledge, the skillful means that's within you now is manifesting. So that is unconscious competence, or what I call autonomic competence. That is how we can progress. Gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Because in order to gain gradual progress, if it is to be, it is up to what? Somebody else? No, it's up to me. Only you can help yourself with gradual progress. Now we come to the last part of the advice the Buddha gave to Ganaka Moggallāna, and that is about entering into the 4 jhanas. Now, jhana, my teacher translated it as ecstasy. Venerable Dr. Punaji calls it ecstasy. Ek means out. Ecstasy means standing. So it is like standing out. That means you're no longer caught in your emotional state. You are now out of your emotional state. And this out of your emotional states are the constituents. These are the 5 constituents that can help you bring your mind out of this emotional state. And this process of the mind coming out of the emotional state, you will experience the jhanas. So these 5 constituents are vitakka, vichara. Vitakka is inference. That means thoughts arising. Vichara means questioning, asking, inquiry. So when your thoughts arise, very often you will then observe it and say, oh, what is this? It is arising. So this is this mental process that's going on, that observing thoughts arising. Vitakka, vichara. And then when you do that, your mind is peaceful. You're no longer disturbed by your environment, because people who have reached this stage, they have already abandoned the 5 hindrances. So there are no disturbances from the hindrances anymore. Then you gain a level of mental peace, mental stillness. This is called cognitive contentment. Now, this word piti is often translated as rapture. Rapture is okay, but then unfortunately the word rapture gives the meaning that people are feeling excited, happy, It is not a state of happiness in that sense. It is a state of contentment. It is contentment that leads to a kind of happiness which really you cannot describe it. It is not like getting sensual happiness. So cognitive contentment is a more accurate description of the meaning of piti. Now, when the mind is still and peaceful, the body is feeling comfortable. And that feeling of the comfort of the body is sukha. So sukha relates more to the body. Piti relates more to the mind, the cognitive process. So the mind is contented and the body is relaxed and comfortable. And then you will experience this state of unified mind called ekagata. Ekagata is often translated as one-pointedness. Okay, one-pointedness is one way of describing it, but what really is happening is that we have 2 parts of the mind, the emotional mind and the thinking mind. Ekagata basically means that these 2 minds are no longer working independently. They are now joined as one, unified. So ekagata is really a unification of the mind. And this unification leads to single-pointedness. That's why ekagata is translated as single-pointedness. It's really not talking about focus on one object, but it is about the 2 parts of the mind working together in unison, unified mind. And Bhante Agachita also calls this compo-focus, composure and focus. The mind is very focused and very composed, right? Not concentration, right? So these are the 5 constituents that make up jhana. So with 5 constituents present, you are now experiencing the first jhana. You have already abandoned the 5 hindrances, because if you have not abandoned the 5 hindrances, you have not eliminated the 5 hindrances, it is not possible to experience jhana. So now the mind is peaceful, still, and there's no emotional arousal anymore. That is first jhana. And these 4 jhanas, what are they doing? My teacher pointed out, it is the gradual withdrawal of the chitta. That means bringing the chitta to a level where it completely still. The chitta is no longer disturbing the mano, the thinking mind. So this is really the process of bringing the mind to a level of perfect stillness. So in the first jhana, you're still observing. And then the mind is contented and the body is comfortable, and then the mind is unified. Then the observation stops. When you give up observation, the mind is very still. There's no more thoughts arising. There's no more observation coming up. There's no more cognition going on. And then you're feeling contented, cognitive contentment. And then the 3 constituents there will make up the second jhana. And then this giving up of this contentment, piti, it leads you to the third jhana. And what remains is the body is comfortable and the mind is completely unified and stilled. So that is the third jhana. And finally, what remains is really a perfect stillness of mind. And that is sama samadhi, right? Sama samadhi. Perfect stillness of the mind. Ekagata, in the 4th jhana. And when you're in the 4th jhana, you are at the doorstep of nibbana. Anyone who has practiced to the level of experiencing the 4th jhana, they are basically now at the doorstep of awakening. The Buddha has pointed out very clearly. So these are the 8 advices, 8 stages of progress that the Buddha advised Ganaka Moggallāna. And the Buddha pointed out very importantly, he says, there is no jhana for one who has no panya. There is no panya for one who has no jhana. One who has both jhana and panya is in the proximity of nibbana. And this is the advice of the Buddha, basically, that you need jhana to gain panya. So that's basically what it is. So in summary of the benefits of meditation, when we begin to practice meditation, the first thing we will gain are all these simple things to do with the body. Like stilling the body, slowing down the heart rate, improving blood circulation and so on. But then we begin to cultivate the mind and purify the mind. And what happens? We begin to abandon emotional excitement. That means we can no longer get easily excited by anything goes on. We no longer get emotional whatsoever. And then we're able to tame our lust, hatred, and delusion. We're able to cultivate this introspective attention, introspection. And then we're able to develop this cognitive consonance, the ekagata, the mind being unified. And then we will have this mental equilibrium. Right? We are experiencing samadhi. And finally, from there, we can see realities. We can gain vipassana. So vipassana is really a byproduct of these. You don't have to try and gain vipassana. You just have to bring yourself to the level of samadhi, and then you will gain vipassana. And then you will have full comprehension, panya. With panya, you will then become liberated from all suffering. Then you are enlightened, awakened. You are the arahant when you reach that point. So that's how it is. People can become arahant. They can actually attain nibbana when they reach that stage. So having understood that, Ganaka Moggallāna went on to ask the Buddha one simple question. He says, Master Gautama, do they all attain nibbana? Or do some not attain it? Basically, he was asking, do all monks who practice this eightfold way, do they end up gaining nibbana? What is the reason that some attain nibbana and the ultimate goal, and some do not attain it? And then the Buddha went on to use the simile of going to Rajagaha, the road to Rajagaha. So the Buddha said that if you want to go to this next town and you ask someone to give you direction, what does he do? He will say to you, you walk this way, you make left turn or right turn, you come to this landmark, and then you turn right and you go on, and then you reach there, and then you will finally get to Rajagaha. So there are instructions being given what you need to do in order to get to Rajagaha. But some people don't get there, right? Because these instructions, this is really describing where the destination is and the path leading to the destination. Some people don't make it. They don't reach there. So because why? Because somewhere along the line, they make a wrong turn. They took the wrong turn, or they followed the wrong path, or they did not pay attention to the advice given. But those who do attain it, because they adhere to the path. So the Buddha gave us the sublime eightfold way, the noble eightfold path. So it is our job, our duty, our diligence to adhere to it. So the Buddha pointed out, as the Tathagata, he is really the one who shows the way. And he says, following the path, those who do not attain Nibbana, because in those days some people become monks because it's an easy living. They don't have to work for food. They just have to stand there and then people give them food. And they don't have to do any hard work. They just help out in the monastery and then they get free lodging, free food, free clothing. Maybe robes, but still, free food, free lodging, free clothing. There are some people who do that. So the Buddha pointed out, people who don't attain Nibbana, they are not adhering to good faith. And again, faith is confidence and aspiration in the Dharma, founded in knowledge and understanding. This is really human psychology, humanistic psychology, that we have faith in whatever we have studied and understood. Not blind faith, as in believing in God or believing in supernatural powers, but understanding, learning and understanding the Dharma. And then he also pointed out that there are some fraudulent monks, fake monks, and then there are also those who are hollow. They don't want to study, they don't want to learn, they don't want to understand, right? They just want to have free food, free lodging. And then unguarded in their senses, allowing sensual desires to disturb them, and finally undevoted to wakefulness. They are not cultivating internally. And those who become enlightened, those who do attain Nibbana, are those who have gone forth to homelessness out of faith, confidence and aspiration in the Dharma. And basically guarded in their senses, devoted to wakefulness, and greatly respectful of training, and then therefore they practice, and because of their practice, they will gain the fruits. Therefore, they don't engage in anything that is luxurious and so on. So that is how people then become enlightened. And then on hearing that, Ganaka Moggallāna said, magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, to the Dharma, and to the Sangha of Bhikkhus. So I hope this has been helpful in sharing this. I must thank my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, who has taught me all these things, and these have been very useful for my own practice. So hopefully this sharing has been helpful to you. So thank you very much for your attention. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.